Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. The first thing Naruto noticed when he woke up was the foliage of the tall trees towering above him with the sunlight coming through them. The second thing he noted was a splitting headache he had and was only made worse with the glare of the sun coming through the leaves. But the third and most important thing he noticed was that he was gagged and bound. He widened his eyes in panic as the events of the day before rushed into his mind. He remembered being attacked by Aiwa and then the Akatsuki showed up, and then he lost consciousness fighting one of them. How he ended up in this place was a mystery to him. He attempted to stand and yell for help from his sensei, but to no avail. He squirmed some more while his groans were muffled by the rag in his mouth when he noticed a girl coming into the clearing. He recognized her. She was one of the Aiwa bastards that got him into this mess. The pink-eyed girl grimaced when she saw that Naruto had woken up. She had left him alone after she woke up still feeling sore from her wound and left for a moment to patch herself up with some bandages she had sealed on a scroll, and to look for food and water. She had discarded her ruined flak jacket and one could see the bandages through the blood-stained hole on her red uniform. So, you are finally awake, Konoha scum. She continued to approach him until she was right beside him and crouched to get a better look at him. She wanted to torment the boy for the trouble they went to capture him since a lot of her comrades died for the mission. You really were a handful to catch, you can thank your master for that. But now that we got you, we can take you back to Aiwa and give the Kyuubi to someone worthier of that power. She could see the rage in his eyes as he started shouting at her, or at least trying to. She put a hand close to her ear in mockery at the attempt of her captive. What was that? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Naruto got even angrier at being ridiculed, but even using all his strength he couldn't break free from his binds. Suddenly, his stomach growled, which caught both of their attention, and he got embarrassed at showing any further vulnerability to his enemy. She put on a condescending grin at his predicament. Oh, you hungry, Konoha dog? Well, you are in luck. I found a river a little while ago and left some traps to catch a fish or two, also I brought some water. She said while pulling a canteen from her pouch and started gulping the contents down. Naruto stared at her with a craving look. He was pretty thirsty too. He hadn't had anything to drink or eat in almost a day. Kurotsuchi noticed the look that the young Jinchuriki was giving her, and after giving a satisfied sigh at her quenched thirst, she regarded him once more. Sorry, how inconsiderate of me. Here, have some. She then proceeded to spill the liquid on the blonde's face, making him close his eyes and groan in protest. Oops, Butterfingers. You didn't even drop it, you bitch. Thought Naruto, hoping that somehow his glare would cause her to drop dead. Ah, such a shame, it's empty now, so I guess you are out of luck. Said Kurotsuchi with fake remorse, before returning to her more cheerful attitude. Oh well, nothing to be done about it. I heard that Jinchuriki can survive for a while longer than most people thanks to their tenants, so I'm sure you'll be alright. Now that I think about it, I guess there is no need to feed you after all. She then went to the edge of the clearing, just about to re-enter the forest, and glanced at Naruto one last time. I'm gonna see if I caught anything to eat. Don't go anywhere while I'm gone. She mocked him one last time and departed, leaving Naruto fuming and alone for a few hours. Naruto was laying on the ground beside his crazy captor and a bonfire. Night had already fallen, and most of the fish were already eaten by the Aiwa Kunoichi. She didn't even let him have any. His rage hadn't completely died down, but now his most troubling thought was that he was trapped in God knew where, and his only companion was the crazy girl that abducted him. Thinking that he may never get to see his friends and home again crushed his spirit. There were so many things he still wanted to do. He still needed to save Sasuke, he still wasn't Hokage, and he still had yet to get a date from Sakura, or any girl for that matter. He refused to let this be the end, but he couldn't think of a way out right now. Kurotsuchi was sitting just a few feet away and was currently cleaning her sword. She took great care of her mother's blade, and the battle from the previous day had left it quite dirty. She took a side glance to her captive. He had stopped squirming a while ago, and she wanted to confirm that he was still behaving and not trying anything sneaky. When she confirmed that he wasn't up to anything, she went back to her weapon. Her usual confidence was gone, and she had a look of worry instead. She wondered if her father and Akatsuchi were alright. Last she saw them, they were fighting one of the strongest shinobi she had ever seen, and they had two more monsters of his level on their tails. She couldn't bear to think about losing them, but she had to have faith that they managed to get out of that situation. They must have. They were strong. She also wished with all her being that was the case. And even if they were fine, she didn't have a way to know where they were, or where she was for that matter. She had scouted the island earlier in the day, and she was surprised by what she found. She managed to see what appeared to be a tail and legs attached to the island, so it had to mean that it wasn't just an island, it was a living creature, big enough to have a large-sized forest on its back. It even had its own ecosystem and everything. She massaged her temple, wondering how she even got into such a complicated situation. The burning embers of the bonfire were the only things that could be heard as both of them pondered on their respective problems. Neither of them could sleep that night with such troubling thoughts plaguing their minds. Land of Lightning, Kitsuchi, Akatsuchi, and most of the survivors of the Iowa force were resting in a small camp that they had set on the seashore. After their failed assault, they looked for any signs of Kurotsuchi and the Jinchuriki until they decided that with their wounds they weren't in any condition to be looking around, and begrudgingly they decided to go back to shore to rest and tend to their injuries before they could continue. It had almost been a day now since they got separated from the girl. Right now the few shinobi that hadn't been severely hurt were continuing the search, which left Kitsuchi and the rest to wait for any update on their progress. Kitsuchi currently was sitting on a small log that he was using as a makeshift chair. He was heavily bandaged and in a bad mood. He turned to see the rest of his men, and most of them looked just as somber as he was. Losing so many comrades in such a short time left them feeling depressed. He saw Akatsuchi, and the boy had a gloomy look rarely seen on the happy-go-looking young man. He was obviously sad about their losses and worried over his missing friend. And along with his entire torso bandaged, he looked pretty miserable overall. Kitsuchi couldn't blame the boy, he was worried sick about Kurotsuchi too. She was injured, alone in foreign lands, and was responsible for taking care of the objective of an S-ranked mission that also happened to be the Jinchuriki of the strongest Biju in existence. He put his head in his hands, wondering how did they end up in such a mess. This mission is a disaster, thought Kitsuchi with a heavy sigh. When they started the mission they had close to 100 ninja, give or take, and now they were down to 30 or so, and that was without taking into account his missing daughter. Could this get any worse? Captain Kitsuchi. He heard one of the men he sent to continue the search call out to him. He was approaching fast and seemed to be in a panic. Kitsuchi stood up fast, dreading to hear any bad news about his daughter. What is it? Did you find my daughter? He hoped that she was all right. He couldn't bear to lose her too, like her mother. The young Tokubetsu Junin halted before his leading commander and shook his head with urgency. We haven't found her yet, sir, but we just got a messenger bird from the village, and it's an emergency, said the shinobi holding up a letter. Kitsuchi snatched the letter rapidly and starting reading its contents. As he continued, his face got paler and paler until he finally clenched his fist around the piece of paper in anger. We got played, yelled Kitsuchi with fury. He turned swiftly to his subordinates who seemed disturbed at his sudden outburst. We have to go back to the village at once. We were attacked by the Akatsuki. The news got looks of shock and anger on the faces of the remaining Iowa shinobi, but then quickly got to pack their tools and tents as fast as they could. While the camp was hastily being packed, Kitsuchi was trembling with rage. He now understood that the Akatsuki were waiting for them to leave to attack the village. The timing was just too perfect, which it also had to mean that the bastards somehow managed to set up this whole thing. I knew this mission was a bad idea. he turned to the Tokubetsu Junin once more to give him a new order. You and the rest of the search team stay here to continue looking for Kurotsuchi, the rest will come back with me to Iowa. The lower-ranked shinobi nodded in understanding and left in a hurry to get to the rest of the search party. Kitsuchi felt terrible for leaving without finding Kurotsuchi first, but they were shinobi, and they had to do what was best for the village, and right now returning to Iowa and helping with whatever they could was the right thing to do, even if as a father it killed him inside. He just hoped that his village and daughter would be fine. Merchant Island in the Land of Lightning. Jiraiya was resting on the same inn he and Naruto had previously stayed at, and he was tired as hell. He had been looking for any signs of Naruto for a whole day, and for the life of him, he just couldn't find even a trace. He was already exhausted to begin with because of his long battle with Iwa and the Akatsuki, and spending several more hours searching fruitlessly just added to his fatigue. And on top of that, he had to pay the wrecked ship that he had borrowed, and he still got an earful for that. He heard a knock on his window and turned to look at a small red toad banging the glass from outside. He got up in a hurry and let the little amphibian enter the room. The small animal found himself a nice comfortable spot on the bed and looked at Jiraiya. The toad was red with blue markings around his eyes, and had the kanji for gold on his back. He was also wearing green goggles. I have been keeping an eye on the Iowa squad just as you asked me to, old man. They didn't even notice me hiding nearby. What did you find, Kosuke? Did they know anything at all about Naruto? Asked Jiraiya anxiously. He was not in the most patient of moods, not with the current issues. The toad gave his report. They really seem to not know anything about the boy. However, it appears that they have lost one of their own too. And not only that, but it seems that both Naruto and the Kunoichi were lost together. Jiraiya was troubled by that information. He didn't like the blonde to be stranded along with one of their enemies. And while he knew Naruto could handle himself against a single enemy, even a skilled one, he didn't know the situation he was in. The boy could be injured, or captured, or worse. The point was that he could be in an unfavorable position and he had no way to know or help him at the moment, and that made him feel impotent. However, the toad wasn't done talking. There was something else. They got a message from Iwa, and apparently their village was attacked by the Akatsuki, so they went back to Iwagakure, leaving only a small search party here. Jiraiya widened his eyes in surprise at hearing about the attack on Iwagakure. Now a realization hit him, so that was how Iwa found out about Naruto. The Akatsuki probably found a way to put the boy on Iwa's radar to make them commit some of their elite forces and leave the village undefended, which in turn gave them a window of opportunity to invade them. If he had to guess, they used that chance to get Iwa's Jinchuriki and planned to get Naruto too once the Sannin and the Iwa platoon were too weak from their fight to put much resistance. Jiraiya felt like a fool. He had miscalculated. He didn't expect the Akatsuki to make such a daring move so soon. They still had a couple more months to train, but he should have known better than to drop his guard. Now not only was Naruto officially out of time, and earlier than expected to boot, but the boy was out there, lost in Kumo's ocean with an enemy Kunoichi and a search party out for his head. If only he could make Shima or Fukasaku reverse summon the boy, but it wasn't as simple as a regular summon. For a reverse summon, the user had to know the chakra signature of the person they are trying to summon, and the couple of elder toads had never met the boy personally. They couldn't know someone's chakra signature if they had never seen the person before. Yes, they had been in the battle helping against Iwa just as Naruto had been, but Naruto had been using the Kyuubi's chakra at the time, so even if they picked up a feeling for the blonde's chakra, it would do them no good if it was the Kyuubi's. So that only left to find a toad that knew Naruto and also knew how to use the jutsu, but as far as he knew, only Fukasaku and Shima knew how to do it. With all things considered, he was running out of options and he needed to make a choice now. There was no time to rest. I'm going back to Konoha to get a proper tracker team to help. Kosuke, you continue keeping watch on the Iowa team searching for Naruto. If they find him first, tell me immediately. said the sage, going for the door with the intent of leaving as soon as he could. The red toad gave a salute in obedience. Leave those guys to me, and I wish you good luck. But you better hurry, we don't know how much time we can spare. You don't need to tell me that, I know. I'll be back soon, good luck to you too. Jiraiya finally left the inn. He would get to Konoha in a couple of days if he traveled at full speed. He just wished that Naruto could hold on until then. Jiraiya would never forgive himself if something were to happen to his godson. Island on the Land of Lightning. Kurotsuchi was coming back to her improvised camp where she left the blonde idiot. She had come to the conclusion that they needed to change locations as fast as they could. After having been up all night, she decided to look for food once more, and in her little expedition, she encountered gigantic insects and larger than normal tigers, enormous bears, and a lot of other kinds of abnormal predators. She couldn't afford to keep leaving the Jinchuriki at the mercy of the bizarre beasts, or she risked getting the moron killed and fail her mission. So she needed to find a more secure location to set up her camp. In fact, she was surprised that they had lasted as long as they had without being attacked by one of those animals. When she arrived at the clearing, she saw the orange-clad idiot still struggling to free himself, but to no avail. She approached him with the same disdain as always and gave him a kick to the ribs to make him stop moving. Hey bastard, stop making a fuss, will ya? We are changing locations, so stay still and don't give me any trouble. Naruto glared at her in defiance. He didn't care for his vulnerable position, he just wanted to free himself from his bindings, and if he couldn't, then he at least hoped to give the kunoichi as much trouble as possible just to show her that he wasn't just gonna give up without a fight. Along with his death glare, he started spewing insults at her, but of course, since his mouth was covered, only angry groans could be heard. Kurotsuchi put on the same condescending look that she gave earlier and stared down at the boy with eyes that promised nothing but pain. What did you say? I think I heard. Please Kurotsuchi-sama, beat my senseless until I can no longer move because I'm so retarded that I can't follow simple instructions. Well, since you asked nicely, then I guess you earned it. She cracked her knuckles and got on one knee and pulled him up by his jacket, ready to punch him in the skull. But Naruto was quick enough that when she grabbed his jacket, he gave her a headbutt to her face. She dropped him in surprise at the unexpected hit and brought a hand to her lip, and inspected her fingers to see blood. The idiot had busted her lip. She snarled in fury and looked at the Jinchuriki with hatred. Now you are really in for it now. She lifted her arm, ready to deliver a crushing blow to the blonde when she felt something wet touch her forearm. She stopped the delivery of her punch at the sensation, and realized that the liquid substance was dropping from above, so she looked up and paled at what she saw. Above them were countless spiders staring at them with their fangs bared and salivating, which explained the dripping liquid. The arachnids were the size of small dogs and were black in color with red stripes, which meant that they were probably venomous. This is exactly why I didn't want to stay here anymore, thought the kunoichi in panic. Naruto wondered why the girl stopped her assault, so he too glanced up, and joined his captor in her shock as the army of small red eyes of the spiders made their stomachs turn. After staying still for a moment, the spiders leapt from the trees and started to descend fast towards them. The aggression of the arachnids made Kurotsuchi prepare her weapons to fend the creatures off, and Naruto started his squirming once more. Kurotsuchi rapidly started throwing kunai and shuriken at the foul creatures, making them fall dead before they could even reach their targets. As for the ones that did manage to reach her, she slew them with her sword in fluid motions, hacking and slashing left and right. Naruto for his part was desperately trying once again to free himself, as he wasn't particularly fond of being defenseless as an army of deadly animals were trying to kill him. His blood froze when he felt one of the spiders start crawling over him until he was face to face with the damn thing. He attempted to scream when the creature bared its fangs, ready to inject its venom into his body, when a kunai planted itself in the arachnid's head, courtesy of the crazy kunoichi, and the animal fell lifeless to the side. Relief washed over the blonde at the demise of his predator. But he soon perked up when he noticed that the kunai that killed the spider was still embedded in its body and was within his reach, and started crawling towards the corpse of the animal. Once Naruto closed the distance, he turned his body and used his hands to search the corpse over, and ignoring his goosebumps at touching such a repulsive creature, he continued touching the body until he grasped the handle of the kunai. After a moment of pulling the weapon, he finally felt the kunai detach itself from the dead body, and without wasting another second he started cutting the ropes in his hands. Luckily his captor was too busy fending off the rest of the spiders to notice his actions. Meanwhile, Kurotsuchi was still slashing relentlessly the swarm of arachnids. It was difficult to keep both the idiot and herself out of harm's way that she didn't get a single moment to catch her breath. After a few minutes of non-stop cutting, she finally finished off the remainder of the spiders. She gave a sigh of relief, glad to be done dealing with such disgusting things. Ew, some of them touched me. I hate spiders, the thought made her queasy, but at least it was over. Suddenly, she heard the distinctive sound of metal cutting through the air. She got a cut on her cheek as she barely managed to dodge a kunai aimed for her head. She turned around and saw that the Konoha moron had somehow freed himself, and he looked pissed. She narrowed her eyes at the new threat and unsheathed her sword once more. So, you used the distraction that the spiders provided to your advantage, clever. But I'm done being nice. Next time I'm gonna cut off your limbs and cauterize the wounds, maybe that will keep you still. Naruto's face showed nothing but ire for the kunoichi. He knew he wasn't in the best state to be fighting. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, neither did he have anything to drink, and on top of that he didn't even get any sleep the last night. All thanks to the Iowa bitch. But right now he didn't care about that. He was resolute to get her back for all that she put him through, tenfold. He joined his hands and made a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shadow Clone Technique. 10 copies of the blonde appeared around Kurotsuchi. She clicked her tongue in annoyance at seeing the technique once more. Is that jutsu the only thing you can do? You really are a one-trick pony, aren't you? She readied herself as the shadow clones rushed at her with an enraged yell. Her dexterity allowed her to evade the attacks and countered with slashes of her sword, dispelling them one by one. The young Jinchuriki responded by making double the previous amount of clones, and once again the small army of clones rushed at the kunoichi, ready to beat her to a pulp. Give me a break, I hate that jutsu, thought Kurotsuchi with exasperation at the repeated use of the annoying technique. She quickly made some hand seals of her own and put her palms on the ground. Doden. Doryuso. Earth release. Earth flow spears in an instant, countless spikes made of stone starting extending from the ground, impaling and dispelling the rampaging clones. However, she noted that all the blondes had disappeared, which meant that the original wasn't among them. Where did that idiot go? She thought while looking around attentively for any kind of sign that gave the boy's location away. Rasengan. Spiraling sphere. She looked up in surprise and saw the Konoha shinobi with a ball of blue chakra in his hand coming directly at her. As the attack closed in, she barely managed to erect a small dome made of rock around her. But the earth structure couldn't stop the attack completely and she was sent sailing through it, but she righted herself and managed to land while standing. She had at least weakened the sphere of condensed chakra enough that it didn't hurt her too much. As soon as Naruto saw the kunoichi smash through the stone shelter, he quickly grabbed one of the kunai still laying around and rushed at the pink-eyed girl. Said girl saw him coming and pulled out her sword to parry the kunai stabs. The sound of steel meeting steel resonated in the clearing as both fighters attempted to get the upper hand. Finally, their weapons stopped as they clashed against each other and both users glared daggers at the other. While both shinobi pushed trying to overpower their enemy, Naruto remembered the bandages in the girl's torso. So he took his chance and kicked in place to the kunoichi's midriff. Kurotsuchi gave a loud cry as the kick connected with her stomach and momentarily stumbled at the sharp pain from her still healing injury. Naruto rushed to continue pressing the attack, but she once again parried the kunai and used her other hand to deliver a solid punch to his face. The force of the blow was reinforced by her newly reignited anger and sent him a few meters away from the girl. The irate Kunoichi took the moment of respite to examine her wound with her hand, and her rage increased at seeing her blood-stained palm. Her wound had reopened. To hell with the mission, I'm gonna kill him. She glanced at the blonde that had started to stand again and yelled at the top of her lungs. I'm gonna kill you, moron. You hear me? You are dead. She gripped her sword tightly and charged at Naruto before he could fully pick himself up, and poised her sword to pierce his heart. But before she could close the distance, a bolt of lightning struck the earth between her and the blonde and stopped her dead in her tracks. Both of you, drop your weapons and stand down. Both Naruto and Kurotsuchi looked around them to find at least a couple dozen of Kumo shinobi surrounding them. You could tell they were from Kumo by their dark gray uniforms with white flak jacket and forehead protectors. One of the Kumo ninjas took a step forward. He had spiky brown hair and had a green line on the length of his nose. Aside from the standard Kumo uniform, he also wore a gray scarf. Drop your weapons and stand down, I won't repeat myself again. As he said that, the rest of the Kumo ninja drew their weapons, ready to put them down if they made a move to attack. Naruto was still surprised by the turn of events but complied nonetheless. He dropped the kunai before standing up completely. Kurotsuchi was still furious and sore, so she hesitated for a moment. But after thinking it over, she finally gave a resigned huff and threw her sword and took off her weapon pouch, letting it fall off to the floor too. When the Kumo shinobi saw their cooperation, they relaxed a bit, but they were still on guard. What is the meaning of this? Why are Konoha and Iwa shinobi trespassing in Kumo's territory? You better answer truthfully if you know what's good for you. Continued to ask the same shinobi with the green stripe on his nose. Naruto was the first to speak. This crazy bitch is trying to kill me, that's what happens. She and her Iwa friends attacked me and my sensei. And somehow I ended up here after that. He said, pointing at the girl accusingly. Shut up, Konoha scum, said Kurotsuchi, snarling at Naruto with hatred, before addressing the Kumo shinobi. This guy is a target of my village. Kumo and Iwa are on good terms, aren't we? Well, you would be doing Iwa a great service if you help me apprehend this son of a bitch. Wait a minute. Konoha and Kumo are neutral too. You can't just let this hag do as she wishes, said a nervous Naruto, worried at the possibility that they would listen to her. No one wants your opinion, trash. And what do you mean, hag? You don't look that much younger than me, replied the pink-eyed girl with indignation. Well, you could have fooled me. You are so ugly you don't even look like a girl, retaliated Naruto, with as much venom in his voice as the girl. Kurotsuchi narrowed her eyes in contempt at the blonde. Keep digging your grave deeper, you piece of shit. Just wait until I get my hands on you. Silence. The thundering yell of the brown-haired man made Naruto and Kurotsuchi halt their argument and returned their startled looks to him. I won't tolerate you fighting within our borders. And despite what you say, there is no evidence to say that you are not spies. People aren't supposed to be able to find this place easily after all. This caused both teenagers to get equal looks of disbelief. Spies? I would rather die than work alongside this. No way we would be spying together, said Kurotsuchi, trying to rid herself of any suspicion. That's right, you got it all wrong. There is no way I would work with this crazy bitch, agreed Naruto with the girl. However, the Kumo ninja remained firm in his conviction. It's true that it would be extremely unlikely for Iwa and Konoha to work together. But be as it may, we can't just trust your word. So I'm afraid that we will have to put you both into custody until we think what to do with you. If you resist, we will use lethal force. He signaled the rest of his shinobi to arrest both Naruto and Kurotsuchi. Both the blonde and the girl didn't put any resistance. As things were right now, they were in no position to be fighting a squad of shinobi, not with their injuries and starvation in Naruto's case. So they begrudgingly refrained themselves from starting a fight as the Kumo shinobi started tying them up. Turtle Island prison cells. Naruto and Kurotsuchi were kept in separate but adjacent cells, just in front of each other on opposite sides, and they both could see each other through the metal bars. The room and cells were small, so it was obvious that the island wasn't meant to hold prisoners and the cells were just temporary solutions should the need arise. The ropes binding them had their legs completely wrapped and they couldn't move their hands at all, with another set of ropes tightly adjusted to keep their wrists behind their backs. And even if they somehow could find a way to set themselves free, a couple of Kumo ninja were guarding the only exit outside. Naruto was especially miffed. He had just managed to free himself from the Iwa Banshee just to end up as someone else's prisoner. And they still didn't even let him eat anything. Konoha scum, this is all your fault. The Jinchuriki turned to glare at his cell companion, but the girl continued her rant anyway. If you had just obeyed when I told you to, we could have avoided the spiders and we wouldn't be here right now. The boy got angry in indignation at the girl's accusations. Oh, so now is my fault. If you and the rest of the Iowa bastards hadn't bothered me, we wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. So I think it's pretty obvious who are the biggests here. And stop calling me that. I have a name, it's Naruto. I don't give a rat's what you are called. She yelled at the boy, not caring at all for what he had to say. And they even took away the sword my mother gave me. If I don't get it back, I will make you pay for that with your head. Naruto was dumbfounded that she would care about such a thing at the moment. Who cares about a stupid sword? We have bigger problems than a lost weapon. Have your mom give you another one or something for s sake. Naruto didn't think it was possible for the girl's gaze to become any colder, but somehow it did. She stopped her outburst and looked at him darkly. My mother is dead. She was killed by Konoha trash like you. The malice in her voice could have frozen anyone's blood. That made Naruto's eyes widen. He remembered what Jiraiya had said about the bitterness that the war left between Iwa and Konoha, but the girl was young, so he hadn't expected her to have lost someone too. Even with recent events, he couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for the brash kunoichi. As someone who grew without a family, he could sympathize. The empty feeling of longing for the love of a parent was something that Naruto knew all too well. She noticed the blonde's surprised face, so she continued her tirade. Such a shame that we weren't allowed to kill you. It goes against my principles to spare any of you, murderers. If it was up to me, I would see you and your kind dead at my feet. Naruto's pity vanished as fast as it had come. He couldn't tolerate his home and comrades being labeled murderers by the ignorant girl. Not all of us are like that. You don't even know me or my friends. Tell that to the families of all the people that Konohas like you have killed. Threw the kunoichi back at him. That was a long time ago. It's precisely because you idiots can't pull your heads out of your to live in the present instead of the past, that this enmity still exists. If you guys were reasonable, we could have peace, said Naruto, grinding his teeth in frustration. She gave a laugh filled with ridicule. Ha! You really are a moron if you think such a thing is possible. You can't know that. In fact, when I become Hokage, I will try to fix the relations between our villages. Living with bitterness is not the answer, said Naruto with determination. Kurotsuchi looked baffled at the Jinchuriki. Wow, your stupidity never ceases to amaze me. You Hokage, peace. You are just a brat living in your own little pink-colored world filled with unicorns and rainbows. Wake up. This the real world. If anyone is gonna become a Kage is me. And let me tell you, once I become Tsuchikage, the first thing I'll do is crush your pathetic village. Naruto had already lost all his patience at her close-mindedness. You are such a detestable girl, you know that. Your sight is so clouded with hatred that you can't see anything else. And you are a delusional moron that thinks he can change the world if he wishes hard enough. You are ridiculous, said the girl just as pissed off as her fellow prisoner. They stared hotly at each other, breathing heavily with anger, until they both gave a huff and turned their heads away, not bearing to look at the other right now. They stayed silent after that. Having spent all their remaining energy yelling at each other left them a bit more mellow. After a considerable amount of time had passed, Naruto realized something concerning his cell partner. Hey, he called to the girl on the other side of the room. She was resting her head against the wall. When she heard the idiot talk, she turned her pink eyes to him, not bothering to move her head. What do you want, dipshit? I didn't catch your name, asked Naruto with a serious face. She gave him a look of utter disbelief. Is this guy for real? They had tried to kill each other just a couple hours ago, and now he wanted to make small talk. My name is not your business. And why the do you care anyway? Naruto gave a shrug and squinted his eyes. Well, we don't know how long we will be here having to put up with each other, and calling you by your name seems a better option than, Iwa bitch. Besides, I already told you mine. She just continued to stare at him with incredulity. Don't call me anything. Don't even talk to me at all. Period. She then proceeded to continue staring at the wall, ignoring the look of annoyance of the blonde at her dismissal. After a moment, she closed her eyes and sighed. If she had to tolerate the moron for who knew how long, she supposed that it was preferable to have him call her by her name than with undesirable nicknames. And he didn't seem like the type to keep quiet, so she might as well make the best of the situation, as hard as it may be. Kurotsuchi. Naruto looked at her, puzzled. He hadn't expected her to say anything anymore. Huh, my name is Kurotsuchi. There, you happy? Now stop bothering me, said the young prodigy in exasperation at the boy's lack of attentiveness. She then turned her head to the side to avoid looking at the idiot anymore. Naruto was starting to get peeved again at her insufferable attitude. Fine. Is not like talking to you as enjoyable anyway. He finally decided to stop concerning himself with the troublesome girl. She was acting so obnoxious that it wasn't even worth it to try to have a civilized conversation. And he had bigger things to worry about anyway. For instance, he didn't know what happened to the arrow Sennin, but he had faith that the old pervert was alright. He knew the sage was strong, even if his quirks didn't reflect that. He guessed that Jiraiya had to be looking for him at the moment. He could only hope that he managed to find him soon. Kurotsuchi's anger had mostly died down by now and was replaced instead with fear. She worried about what would happen to her. She didn't want to die so far away from home, and it wouldn't even be a glorious death on top of it. She didn't even care for her mission right now, she just wanted to return home with her friends and family. And so both teenagers found themselves lost in their thoughts. Knowing that the only thing they could do now was to wait for the Kumo ninja to decide their fate. They just hoped that they could get out in one piece. Konohagakure was one of the great 5 shinobi villages, and its size and population sure showed it. The village was huge and was surrounded by a thick green forest that gave the place an air of calmness. The village was at the base of a mountain that had the faces of all the previous Hokage sculpted to honor the beloved leaders. The buildings ranged from small to big, but by far the tallest was the Hokage Tower. Right now Tsunade, the Godime Hokage, was going through several stacks of paperwork and was none too happy about it. She was a blonde woman with long straight hair that framed her face that she kept in 2 loose ponytails. She was light-skinned with brown eyes and had a small violet mark in a diamond-like shape on her forehead. Her attire consisted of a gray kimono that showed her rather generous cleavage, dark blue pants and a green haori with the kanji for gamble in the back. Does this ever end? I have been doing this all day and I swear that the stacks aren't getting any smaller, complained the blonde-haired beauty and gave a frustrated sigh. At that moment, her apprentice, Shizune, entered the office carrying an extra stack of papers, which made Tsunade drop her head against the desk in frustration at having yet even more work. Come on Tsunade-sama, it's not so bad. Only a few hours left and you are done for the day, said Shizune. The Hokage's apprentice was a young woman with straight shoulder-length black hair and dark eyes. She was wearing a black kimono and like her master, she used high-heeled sandals. If it's no big deal, why don't you do the paperwork, Shizune? Said the busty blonde, still face down on the desk. Well, you see, I'm more useful tending to other tasks around here. I have my fair share of work too, you know. Yes, that's it, responded the raven-haired girl with a nervous grin and a hand behind her head, which gave away her excuse. That's what I thought, said Tsunade, eyeing the young girl with a deadpan look. Tsunade. Both women gave a jump of surprise at the noise, and not a moment later Jiraiya appeared in the office, entering through the window. The sage was almost out of breath, his clothes were ragged and one could see spots of blood here and there. His unusual appearance put the women on edge. Jiraiya. God, what happened to you? And where is Naruto? You guys were supposed to arrive a month from now, asked a worried Tsunade. Something bad had to have happened to the pervert in Naruto for Jiraiya to be in this state. There is no time to lose, Harem. We were attacked by a squad from Iwa and members of Akatsuki. I lost Naruto in the chaos and I haven't managed to find him. I need a tracker team to help find him and I need it now, said Jiraiya with urgency. He was in such a hurry that he didn't even have the time to catch up with his old teammate. After hearing that her surrogate godson was in trouble, Tsunade didn't waste another second and turned to her apprentice. Shizune. Fetch me Team 8 at once, along with Kakashi and Sakura. Move it, shouted the healer with authority to the raven-haired woman. Yes, Tsunade-sama, responded Shizune, sprinting for the exit. She was just as worried as her master and Jiraiya, as Naruto was like a little brother to her. As soon as Shizune left, Tsunade looked once more to her former teammate with a stern face, showing she was serious now. Jiraiya, while we wait for them to get here, you are gonna tell me exactly what happened and you better not leave any details out. Jiraiya gulped. He knew that whenever Tsunade got like this it usually meant extreme bodily harm for him, but he started detailing everything to the full extent anyway, knowing that whatever punishment the Hokage gave him would be worth taking if it meant saving Naruto. Unknown location. Itachi and Kisame were in a cave, standing in a circle along with 7 other figures that seemed to be some type of holograms. Well done. Our efforts in capturing the Yonbi and Gobi have been successful. We will soon begin the transfer to the Ghetto Mazo, said the silhouette of a tall man with spiky hair, but his eyes were the feature that really stood out, as they were completely purple with a circular ripple-like pattern. I hope I was worth it, Pain-sama. I lost my arm for that, said another figure with the voice of Deidara. Good thing we didn't lose anything important then, replied another of the shadowy silhouettes, laughing at his own joke. Shut up, Hidan. I'll make you regret being immortal when I blow you up in a million pieces with my art, yelled Deidara, enraged at his comrade. I'd like to see you try with only one arm, mocked the figure now known as Hidan. Enough, both of you, said the purple-eyed man, and as soon as he reprimanded them they both stopped their dispute. When everything went silent again, the man resumed speaking. Speaking of which, we need to do something about that missing arm. We are going to go after the Aikibi soon. Suna's desert is vast. When we capture the Aikibi there will be no place to hide from Suna's reinforcements. Deidara can grab the Jinchuriki and get him out fast, so we will need him in top form. That's why I need Kakuzu to find a suitable body and attach its arm to Deidara, said Pain to another figure with pupil-less green eyes and red sclera. Fine. But I'll charge him for that, said the figure now identified as Kakuzu. Hey, what happened to being a good comrade, huh? Complained Deidara in indignation to the greedy man. All that matters in this world is money. Camaraderie has no place in business, said Kakuzu sternly. You bastard, said the bomber shaking a fist at the man. Be grateful that you are getting it back at all. You shouldn't have been so careless to lose it in the first place, idiot. Spoke a hunched figure that couldn't have been anyone else but Sasori. Not you too, Sasori no Dana. That's enough of that, just see to it that it gets done, said Pain, putting an end to the topic. He instead turned to Itachi and Kisame and looked at them with emotionless purple eyes. And what about the Kyuubi? This time, it was Itachi who replied. We are sorry to inform that the Jinchuriki was lost in the commotion of the battle. A lone kunoichi managed to snatch the Kyuubi and ran off with our target. Their current whereabouts are unknown. But the good news is that not even their allies seem to know where they are, which means that he is still out there and even more vulnerable than before," said Kisame, trying to put a positive spin on their failure. He wasn't proud to be the one who lost the boy, especially when he had him in his hands. "We made sure of it. We returned to look for the Kyuubi once again. And after hunting down the measly search party that Iwa left behind, I was able to torture out of them all they knew about it. Before I killed them, that is," finished the man with a wicked grin. "Then we should be on the lookout should the Jinchuriki reappear. Even if the Kyuubi must be the last Biju to be sealed into the Ghetto Mazo, we can always confine him until we are ready for the extraction. Right now he is an easy catch, and we should not let the opportunity go to waste," said Pain before turning to the rest of the members once more. "Just one more thing. As soon as we find the Kyuubi, I shall send whichever team is the closest to him. So I need you all to be ready at a moment's notice. That will be all for now. This meeting is dismissed," said Pain with finality. After the leader put an end to the gathering, all the holograms vanished, leaving Itachi and Kisame alone in the cave. "Well, there is that. I was so sure Leader Sama was gonna get mad at us for letting the Kyuubi get away. I guess we are pretty lucky, Itachi-san," said the swordsman to his partner with a wide grin. "Indeed. Come, Kisame. We too have to continue our tasks," said Itachi impassively as he turned to leave. "Right behind you, Itachi-san," replied the tall man before following after the Uchiha. And so, both members left the cave to continue their duties. Turtle Island. Darui stepped on the island and stretched his arms over his head, glad to finally reach his destination. He was tall, had dark skin and shaggy white hair that was just long enough to cover his left eye. He used the standard clothes used by Kumo ninja, but his was missing the sleeves. On his right shoulder was tattooed the kanji for water, and on his left had the kanji for lightning. He also carried a cleaver-like sword strapped to his back. He had been on a mission close to the coast when he got a message from the Raikage telling him that they had a situation in the Genbu Turtle Island. Apparently, a couple of foreign shinobi had somehow found the elusive island. That would usually mean that they were spies, but the fact that the two were from nations that hated each other made for a weird situation. So as the right hand of the Raikage, it was only appropriate for him to deal with the issue personally. But Darui guessed that the real reason was that he was simply closer to the island and it was easier and more effective to send him to evaluate the situation himself. He didn't wait long until the same Chunin with the green stripe on his nose showed himself to the dark-skinned man. "Glad that you could come, Darui-san. How was your trip?" asked the man in greeting to the respected shinobi. "You know how it is, Motoi-san. This place is always a pain to find, even with our intel on its predicted path. But other than that, the trip was uneventful," responded Darui in the calm and aloof manner that he usually displayed. "Good to hear. Wish we could say the same, though. None of us has ever dealt with this situation," said Motoi with a sigh and putting his hands on his waist. "It's been such a long time since anyone besides our own men managed to reach this place." "Have they given you any trouble?" inquired Darui. He needed to know of anything suspicious they might have tried if he was to make a decision on what to do with them. Aside from when they were trying to tear each other apart when we first found them, no. They usually remain calm and silent in their cells, but once in a while, they start arguing among themselves. They are pretty loud when that happens, it drives the guards insane," informed the lower-ranked ninja to his superior. Darui nodded in understanding. He didn't expect anything different. Having a Konoha and Iwa shinobi together was like having cats and dogs together, so having them yell at each other was a given. "I see. So you don't think they were spying together, then?" Motoi paused for a moment, thinking over the behavior he had witnessed from the two until now. "To be frank, no, I don't think they are working together. Not only are they from enemy villages, but they really seem to not stand the other. But still, we can never be too careful. Can you take me to them? I want to make my own opinion on the prisoners before I decide what to do with them. Said Darui, a little more serious now. Motoi nodded and signaled Darui to follow him as he led the way. Turtle Island cells. The growls from Naruto's stomach resonated in the cell room. He and Kurotsuchi had been there for a day and a half. The Kumo ninjas had yet to talk to them to let them know their verdict. They only came from time to time to check on them and make sure everything was in order. And on top of that, Naruto still had yet to eat. The orange-clad genin was sitting in his cell complaining due to his hunger. And the pink-eyed girl was leaning against the stone wall with her eyes closed, trying to ignore the loud Konoha shinobi. What I wouldn't give for a bowl of ramen right now. I'm starving, lamented the Jinchuriki while daydreaming with the marvelous food of Ichiraku ramen. How he missed his home. The longing of his favorite restaurant made his mouth water, much to the disdain of the Aiwa Kunoichi. The sight of his drooling mouth made his cell partner grimace. I heard you the first 20 times, shut up already. Berated Kurotsuchi. Her patience was running thin. She had been tolerating the boy's noise, from both the blonde himself and his stomach, for hours now, and she was sick of it. I'm hungry too, and you don't see me bitching about it nonstop. And wipe your drool off, you are so disgusting. You have no right to be telling me that. You are the reason I have been going for so long without food. Said Naruto, turning to look at the girl with an accusatory look. The Aiwa prodigy rolled her eyes uncaringly. At least they gave us water a couple hours back. That's more than you deserve. Also, I think I'm gonna start smashing my head against the wall if I hear you talk about ramen one more time. And what's wrong with ramen? After all, nothing beats ramen when it comes to taste, Dadbeo. Said Naruto with assurance. Ramen is decent, I suppose, but is not that great, not nearly as much as you praise it anyway. Besides, it's unhealthy. I much rather have barbecue any day over ramen. Said Kurotsuchi as if she were explaining it to a child. Naruto was in shock. For him, that affirmation was practically blasphemy. There is no way barbecue is better than ramen. Barbecue is only meat. Ramen can have meat too, but it can also have a lot of other stuff in it. There is simply no comparison. The kunoichi was getting upset again. The obsession of the blonde for his precious ramen was ridiculous. You Konoha idiots must not know how to cook meat then, because in Aiwa we at least. Wait, why are we even talking about this? We are imprisoned, for S sake. You are the one who complained about me worrying about my sword, and here you are daydreaming about junk food. At least I'm trying to think about something else. We can't do much more than wait anyway. Replied Naruto, attempting to calm the hysteric girl. We were trespassing, we could die for that, you moron. At least show some concern for your sorry, reminded him the short-haired prodigy. I know that, but whatever the boy wanted to say was interrupted when they both heard the door of the room open. They saw the guy with the green line enter the building, closely followed by a white-haired man that they had never seen before and the two guards that usually guarded their small prison. They eyed the newcomer as he made his way to them. He calmly walked across the room and stopped in front of them, just between their cells. Darui just stood there, looking back and forth between the two prisoners, evaluating them. Finally, after a moment of awkwardly staring at each other, the Kumo Junin spoke. So, you are the troublemakers. I'm surprised. I was expecting seasoned ninja, but you are just kids. How dull. They both seemed to take offense and frowned at Darui's comment on their age, thinking that it was a jab to their skills. Said man noticed the looks they were giving him. Regardless, he continued talking. Sorry. I meant no disrespect. When I heard about this commotion, I didn't expect the ones responsible to be so young. But anyway, that's not important right now. What is important, however, is that you both tell me what are you doing here. And don't even think about lying to me. I consider myself a good judge of character and I'm pretty good at reading people. Even with his laid-back tone, the way he said it made Naruto and Kurotsuchi think that it wasn't a good idea to piss him off, not with their necks on the chopping block. However, before any of them could start talking, Darui widened his eyes when he took a good look to their female prisoner. Wait a minute, I recognize you. You are the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, are you not? Asked the Junin in surprise. Motoi and the two guards gasped at hearing her identity and started whispering among them. No one of them expected to have in custody someone so important. A direct relative of a Kage is almost considered royalty in their respective villages. Kurotsuchi mirrored Darui's expression of shock. She didn't think she would be identified so easily by the man. How do you know who I am? Asked the girl, warily. Darui's surprise didn't last long, and he soon returned to his relaxed demeanor. You have been a recent entry on the bingo books. If I recall correctly, you were added because of your exceptional talent despite being so young. There have even been some rumors about you being a possible candidate for Tsuchikage in the future. As the boss's assistant, I always try to memorize individuals that stand out. Like you, explained the man in an apparent calm, but knew that this made the situation even more problematic. If they were to kill the girl, it could cause an international incident. In fact, open war was a very real possibility, so he had to handle this carefully. Naruto, meanwhile, stared at the tomboy with something akin to awe. He hadn't really believed her when she said she would become Tsuchikage. He thought that she was simply making fun of his own dream of becoming Hokage. He couldn't help but feel a bit envious and competitive. He couldn't accept that such an unpleasant girl could be beating him in his goal, even to the point of being recognized in foreign nations. He turned away from Kurotsuchi and instead got Darui's attention. Hey, excuse me, mister. Said man turned to Naruto and blinked slowly in curiosity at the unexpected interruption. What is it? Do you by any chance know about me? Asked Naruto excitedly, curious to know if he was strong enough to be known in other villages. Darui tilted his head and stared impassively at the boy's face for a minute as Naruto waited expectantly. I'm sorry, your face doesn't ring any bells, said the white-haired man, putting a hand behind his head in an apologetic manner. Naruto dropped his head in disappointment as Kurotsuchi smirked triumphantly. That's right, I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry about that. The name's Darui. Nice to meet you, despite the circumstances, said the dark-skinned man jovially. The man's carefree behavior made Naruto feel more at ease. Glad to meet you, Mr. Darui. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage, proclaimed Naruto with a grin. Darui and the rest of the Kumo ninja had an unreadable expression and a sweat drop at the blonde's bold declaration, while Kurotsuchi stared at the boy with a deadpan look. She thought he had to be the biggest moron on the planet to be acting so cheerful in the face of their captors. Okay. Well, Mr. Future Hokage, can you tell me what were you both doing here in the Genbu? This turtle island is not something that can be found just like that. So is natural that you seem suspicious, asked Darui to the blonde, returning to the topic at hand. Naruto widened his eyes in realization. He didn't know that this whole time he had been on the island he and the Arrow Sennin had been looking for. But soon shook off his surprise when he realized that he still needed to explain himself. So he became serious once more and started retelling his story. Oh right, you see, I was on a training trip with my pervert of a sensei. And when we were sailing the ocean looking for a place to train, this crazy chick in an army of was attacked us. He conveniently left out that he and Jiraiya were looking for the island. Naruto wasn't the sharpest shinobi there was, but he wasn't going to admit that he really intended to infiltrate the place. He was in enough trouble as it is. To his credit, he didn't know that the place was off limits, but he doubted that the Kumo ninja would care about his ignorance. So, anyway, after we were halfway through our battle with the bastards we got separated, but after we did, someone else appeared, a guy named Hoshigaki Kisame. Maybe you have heard of him. Once again, Darui was intrigued. Of course, he knew of Hoshigaki. He used to be the most powerful of the 7 swordsmen of Kiri, and now was known as one of the most dangerous missing nin there was. Hearing that they were attacked by such a guy made him wonder just how the heck did these kids survive. Yes, I have heard of him. Please go on, said the Junin with a nod. Well, there is not much after that. I fought him and he knocked me out. And when I woke up I was already in this place, restrained and gagged by her. Said the boy as he looked at the kunoichi with a glare, which she replied to with one of her own and stuck out her tongue childishly. Anyway, after we were attacked by a freaking swarm of spiders I managed to escape in the chaos. After that, we fought and that's when you guys found us. Finished Naruto. Darui looked suspicious, and after hearing the boy's version of the story he turned to the girl. Is what he said true? Anything else you wish to add? Asked the man. Kurotsuchi frowned. She found strange that suddenly the man had started getting suspicious. It was obvious that he was wary of something, but she couldn't think of what. That's pretty much what happened. We basically just attacked him and Jiraiya, then Hoshigaki shows up and... Wait, did you say Jiraiya? As in, Jiraiya of the Sannin? Asked a shocked Darui. Motoi and the other Kumo shinobi were also startled. Kurotsuchi gave a nod to the white-haired man. The same. Confirmed the girl to the stunned men. Just when Darui swore that they couldn't give him any more surprises, he realized what it had to mean. The apprentice of Jiraiya, thought the Junin in astonishment when he remembered that the boy mentioned that he was traveling with his sensei. After that, he turned to Naruto once again. Is it true? You are the student of Jiraiya. The Toad Sannin was one of the most respected and powerful shinobi of Konoha. Having his apprentice captive just made things more complicated. As if having the Tsuchikage's granddaughter hadn't been enough. The blonde put on a confused expression. He didn't know what the big deal was. The Sannin was strong, sure, but he was also a huge pervert that liked to peep on women at any given chance. And the old man was stingy as hell on top of that. With all the money he made from his dirty books he had to be loaded, and despite that he still liked to spend Naruto's money instead of his own. Yeah, that old pervert is my sensei. This is unbelievable, thought Darui in amazement while his companions started whispering once more. What was the chance that both of their prisoners were directly linked to such influential men? However, he still needed to focus on the task. He shouldn't let this revelation distract him. Boy, you said you were attacked by an army, right? How many were the Iowa shinobi that attacked? Naruto squinted in thought, trying to recall the huge platoon of ninja. I dunno. There were a lot of them, I think 100 or something like that. Why do you ask? Questioned Naruto, not knowing why that was important. Kurotsuchi, on her part, was starting to pale with worry. She realized too late what Darui was getting at. Her suspicions were confirmed when Darui focused his whole attention on her once again. I find strange that you just happened to have such a big force when you engaged them, so that means that you came with the sole intention to assault them. But that raises another question. Why did you need to attack them? Asked the white-haired man with a stern face. Kurotsuchi was sweating bullets. The last thing she wanted right now besides being executed of course was for Kumo to realize that the idiot was a Jinchuriki. If they took the Biju for themselves then all her struggles would have been in vain. Isn't it obvious? We wanted to destroy potential threats to Iowa and we knew that Jiraiya wouldn't be easy to take out, and if we eliminated his student while at it all the better. She knew that she was screwed. That excuse was weak and she knew it, but with her nerves, she couldn't come up with a better one on the spot. Both teenagers, and even Motoi and the guards, gave a small jerk in panic when Darui unsheathed his sword and the sound of metal meeting stone echoed when the tip of the blade touched the floor as Darui wielded it. The Junin glared coldly at the now bleached face of the girl. I warned you to not lie to me. If what you said truly was the case, then you wouldn't have bothered to keep the boy alive. I have been very lenient to both of you so far, but I can't take the risk of knowing that you may be hiding something dangerous to us. Tsuchikage's granddaughter or not, I'm not just gonna let you make a fool of us. Naruto had a concerned look as he watched the girl tremble in fear at Darui's threat. He knew that he probably should feel glad that the girl was getting tormented for once, considering that she tried to make his life miserable, but he just didn't enjoy watching another person in need, especially when they were helpless. That was just the kind of person he was. The startled Motoi tried to reason with the Junin. Wait a moment, Darui-san. We should think this through first. Killing someone related to a cage is not to be taken lightly. Darui ignored the protests of his fellow Kumo ninja, inserting his cleaver-like sword between the bars of the cell and lifted Kurotsuchi's head with the flat side of the blade to force her to look him in the eye. Now, tell me, what were your true reasons? By your reaction, I can guess it's something big, and I need to know every detail for you being here, especially if it's important. Last chance to tell me, or else. He left the threat hanging in the air to let it sink in into the girl. Kurotsuchi had lost all her bravado by now. Her face was frozen in terror as she trembled in fear. She didn't want everything to end, not like this. She didn't want to dishonor her village, but she didn't want to lose her life over the mission either. She decided that it was best to lose her pride than her head. She started to open her mouth to give a reply but was interrupted before she could. I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, said Naruto, intervening in their conversation. That confession made everyone go silent and turn to look at the boy in shock, unsure if they heard him right. Motoi and the guards were agape. Darui was staring wide-eyed at the blonde and Kurotsuchi was surprised and confused that the idiot had revealed something so delicate to save her neck. That can't be, mumbled Motoi, still speechless. A Jinchuriki was the ultimate weapon of their respective villages, having one of them captive was a serious matter. That fact alone was enough reason to cause an international incident. You can check if you want. The seal is in my belly, said Naruto with a serious face to the dumbfounded Kumo ninja. Darui withdrew his blade from Kurotsuchi, to which the girl gave a sigh of relief at having the focus diverted from her, and signaled the Chunin to inspect the boy's claims. Motoi and the two guards hastily entered Naruto's cell. The brown-haired Chunin knelt down to lift the boy's jacket, exposing his stomach. After Naruto channeled some chakra, a collective intake of breath was heard in the room as the spiral pattern of the 8 trigrams seal manifested itself in the blonde's skin. It's true. He is a Jinchuriki. What do we do, Darui-san? Asked Motoi at a loss of what to do about this development. Darui had almost dropped his blade when he saw the seal and he couldn't take away his eyes from the ink pattern. He had seen enough. Now he knew that the situation was a lot more complicated than he could have ever thought it would be when he was first called here. He was now just starting to understand the magnitude of the issue. Iwa had sent an entire battalion, among them the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, to try to kill Jiraiya of the Sannin and capture Konoha's Jinchuriki, which was the student of said Sannin on top of that. And now both nations probably thought that both the Jinchuriki and the girl were dead or captured by the enemy. This was the kind of stuff that could start wars, and Darui didn't want Kumo to be anywhere close if the shit hit the fan. Oh, he knew that the Raikage wouldn't concern himself with the possibility of pissing off the other nations. I wasn't a man that backed out from a fight, but he had sent Darui to handle the matter himself. And personally, the right hand of the Raikage didn't want to involve Kumo in the mess that was sure to come, not if he could help it. So there was only one thing to do: wash his nation's hands from all of this. Motoi and the two other Kumo shinobi were waiting impatiently for Darui's answer, while Naruto and Kurotsuchi looked at the man with sweat running down their faces in anticipation for whatever his decision might be. Finally, Darui spoke. Motoi-san, please gather some of our men from the island and make a team for me. I'm gonna escort these two to the border. The order surprised everyone, especially Naruto and Kurotsuchi. Wait a minute, are you really gonna let us go just like that? Asked the girl, incredulously. Really? Heck, yay, I knew you seemed like a nice guy, mister. Exclaimed the blonde in gratitude. Are you sure about this, Darui-san? They found the Genbu, after all, said Motoi, uncertain if this was the right idea. Everything points that they really found this place by mere chance. I don't think they could find this place again even if they tried. Right now I just don't want to involve ourselves with whatever problem Iwa and Konoha have among them. So please Motoi-san, just find the team I asked for. Said Darui with resolution. As you wish, Darui-san, finished Motoi with a salute and swiftly left to start his endeavor. As the Chunin left, Darui turned to the two guards. Please, let these two out of there, and release them from their bindings. I have faith that they will behave. Isn't that right? He said as he turned to give a look of warning to the two teenagers. Of course, responded Naruto and Kurotsuchi in unison. The dark-skinned man nodded in approval and the two men started opening the cells to free the captives. Good to hear. It would be dull to get into trouble with your nations if I ended up killing you, so don't force me to. I don't like to brag, but I'm not the boss's right hand for nothing. I can carry myself pretty well in a fight. Kurotsuchi rubbed her wrists as she stood up, glad to finally be able to move her limbs. She had been immobile for more than a day, so it was natural to feel sore. She couldn't wait to get out of there and stretch her legs. Hey! Called Darui to the girl. The pink-eyed prodigy turned to look at the Junin with wariness. She was still shaken up from before. The man gave her an apologetic look and put a hand on his neck. I'm sorry about before. I wasn't really gonna kill you. I just wanted to make you talk and thought that was the most effective way to do it. I hope you are not angry. Of course not. Why would I be angry? Said the kunoichi through clenched teeth and with a nervous tick. You put a blade to my neck, threatened me, and humiliated me. Of course I'm angry, thought the girl while trying to keep herself calm. Ah, feels good to be able to move freely again, said Naruto with a grin while stretching his arms over his head. Thanks a lot, Mr. Darui. When can we go? We will be on our way as soon as Motoi comes back. It shouldn't be long, but I must warn you, I don't want you fighting each other on the way. I don't care if you want to rip each other's guts, just don't do it while you are on the land of lightning. Explained Darui calmly to the teenagers. Kurotsuchi looked at Naruto with disdain and narrowed her eyes. Fine by me. Just don't let him get close to me. I can't stand the idiot. Same here. Like I would want to be anywhere close to someone like you. Replied Naruto hotly. Darui was already dreading the trip. Not even seconds after telling them to behave, they were throwing insults at each other. Mr. Darui, called Naruto cheerfully to the man. What is it? Asked the Junin, turning to look at the blonde. Can I make a request before we go? Begged the boy with his hands clapped together. Go ahead, replied Darui with curiosity. Can we eat something first? I'm starving, said Naruto with a hand in his stomach for emphasis. Kurotsuchi groaned in exasperation at once again hearing the blonde complain about his hunger. Sure, I guess, said the white-haired man, taken back by the blonde's carefree and cheerful disposition. All right, yelled Naruto and giving a jump in victory. Why can't you stay quiet for even a minute, dumbass? Reprimanded the kunoichi, ready to restart their argument. Darui gave a sigh at the turn of events. This isn't exactly how I expected my day to go. Naruto, Darui, Kurotsuchi, and 5 Kumo Chunin had been traveling for a whole day to the border of the Land of Lightning and the Land of Frost. So far the journey had been uneventful, which Darui was grateful for, and with the current speed of their sprint, they shouldn't take longer than a few hours to reach their destination. Surprisingly, both the Konoha Jinchuriki and the Tsuchikage's granddaughter had kept their end of the deal and managed to keep things civilized, if only because they made a point to not even address each other at all. But the white-haired Junin couldn't complain. As long as things were calm while they were in the Land of Lightning, he didn't care if they were waiting for the first chance to kill each other when they arrived at their destination. In fact, things had been rather tranquil. The girl had barely said a word since they left, and the Jinchuriki only spoke from time to time to ask questions and make small talk. It won't be long before we reach the Land of Frost. Once we get there, just get on your way to your respective nations, said Darui to his travel companions. Just so we are clear on this. We get there, You leave, and then the idiot and I stay there to our own devices? Asked the kunoichi, surprising Darui as she was breaking her silence for the first time since they started their travel. Yay. That's about right, confirmed the dark-skinned man. Naruto frowned at that. He wasn't sure that he could trust Kurotsuchi to not try anything once their Kumo escort left them by themselves. He at least hoped that the girl had some sense of honor and remembered that he helped her back in the island by revealing his status as a Jinchuriki. It wasn't like he was afraid of fighting her or anything, but he much preferred not waste time in a pointless fight and reunite with his perverted sensei as soon as he had the chance. Kurotsuchi for her part was just itching to finally be rid of the Kumo shinobi to get the chance to tear the blonde idiot a new one. These complications aside, she was still on a mission and she intended to finish it. So she still had to subdue and capture the Jinchuriki once again. She smirked at the thought that she may be able to pull off an S-ranked mission without further help. It would certainly look good on her record. Darui glanced at the Konoha and Iowa teenagers and based on their looks he could get a pretty good idea of what their concerns were. They didn't make an effort to mask it in the first place. He sighed in resignation at that, as he knew it wasn't his place to be mediating their issues. His task was to get them out of the land of lightning and that was it. It was a shame that they would most likely end up killing each other. He kinda liked the brash kids. And so, with different levels of anticipation, their travel continued like that for the next few hours. Iwagakure no Sato, Kitsuchi, Akatsuchi, and the remaining Iowa platoon stared in horror at the ruined gates of Iwagakure. They had returned as fast as they could as soon as they heard that Deidara, now a member of Akatsuki, had attacked their village and had done quite a number on it too, but they never expected the damage to be this extensive. As far as they could see, most of the buildings had suffered some form of damage, some were about to crumble down, others barely had a dent, but it seemed that the vast majority had at least something. Kitsuchi made an effort to try and stay calm and collected even with his initial shock and proceeded to relay new orders to his men. I'll go looking for the Tsuchikage to give my report of our mission. Meanwhile, all of you, make yourself useful and see what can you do to help the village, go. Kitsuchi's squad took a moment to snap themselves from their bewildered state but they still complied, and soon all of them scrambled to different parts of the village with the intent of following their commander's orders, and not just for professionalism, but also because they were genuinely worried about their people. On his way to meet his father, Kitsuchi couldn't help himself from glancing around with worry at the ruined buildings in addition to the injured people being treated by the medic Nin. It was a horrible sight. He could see some corpses laying around along with the rubble, a few dead pets here and there, paths that were inaccessible to the common person with the kind of damage sustained, and on top of that he had to see all of that while listening to the occasional cry of agony caused by injuries or by mourning loved ones. He truly hadn't seen a scene such as this since the last war. After wandering around for several minutes, the experienced Junin finally found a small building that was being used as the temporary office for the Tsuchikage. He started to make his way through the crowded place to the small man's desk. With recent events, it was to be expected that their leader would be even more buried in work than usual. Dad, called Kitsuchi to the old man as he pushed civilians and shinobi aside to open his path. Is that you, Kitsuchi? All of you, move out the way. At their leader's command, the crowd made space for the Tsuchikage's son. Soon Kitsuchi was face to face with his father and he could see the bags under his eyes, evidently caused by lack of sleep. He guessed the old man hadn't had a moment to rest since the attack. I didn't know you were back already, said the Tsuchikage to the Junin with weariness. He hoped that at least his son had good news. After how terrible things had gone lately, he really needed to hear something positive for a change. I just got back. Dad, I need to speak with you. In private, said Kitsuchi, emphasizing the last part with urgency. Onoki got serious and gave a nod. He then proceeded to signal the Anbu keeping guard on either side of him to take everyone out. The Anbu were quick to obey and hastily started getting the people out of there. Kitsuchi and Onoki stayed staring at each other as people started emptying the room despite their protests. Finally, after everyone and even the Anbu left the building, father and son were left alone. So, give me your report already, Kitsuchi, said the Tsuchikage impatiently. It was a complete disaster, replied the Junin with a downed look on his features, to which the old man scowled. Jiraiya was much stronger than we predicted. Most of our unit was taken out by him and the Jinchuriki, and that was before the Akatsuki showed up. Onoki bared his teeth in rage when he heard that the Akatsuki were involved. Those bastards. They must have planned this from the beginning. I swear this will not stand. As soon as I get the chance, I will have their heads on a pike. He didn't think that the situation was going to get this bad when he decided to hunt down the Kyuubi. And he dreaded to think what was coming next, because as horrible as things were going lately, they still had Konoha's retaliation to think about. With the way things were, they wouldn't be strong enough to fight a war right now, not when they just lost both their Jinchuriki and a great amount of their ninja had been injured or killed. But he still had another concern. And what happened to the Yellow Flash's son? Did the Akatsuki get him? Asked the short man, sternly. Kitsuchi lowered his head and had a sad look in his eyes. He gave a sigh before retelling the events of their failed task. Kurotsuchi managed to snag the Jinchuriki in the chaos. But we lost her along with the boy. We don't know where she is. I left a search party looking for her and the Jinchuriki before returning as fast as I could, but there is no word on them yet. Finished the man, solemnly. Onoki widened his eyes in worry at hearing about the fate of his granddaughter. No way. We lost Kurotsuchi. Things just kept getting worse by the minute. Despite the fact that he and the girl clashed constantly, she was still his family and he cared about her. And she was their best kunoichi currently. Even if he would never admit it out loud, he knew that she did have a decent shot at becoming a candidate for Tsuchikage. If they were to lose her, it would be a low blow not only for them but for the village as well. I told you this was a bad idea from the start, but you didn't listen. Kitsuchi was starting to lose his cool. He had managed to somewhat keep calm until now, but bringing up his daughter, and along with the state the Iowa was in, was finally starting to wear him down. And all of that in just a few days. Just for trying to kill a single boy we lost our Jinchuriki, the village is in ruins, our people are wounded, a lot of my comrades were taken out, and Kurotsuchi is out there alone, probably dead too. Said Kitsuchi while progressively raising his tone until he was almost shouting. Don't test me right now, Kitsuchi. I'm not in the mood to be tolerating your disrespect to your Tsuchikage. Said Onoki in warning and narrowing his eyes. Besides, we don't know where Kurotsuchi is right now. We can't say for sure she is dead. Let's not kid ourselves here. You know very well that shinobi missing in action rarely come back alive. Shouted Kitsuchi at his father in anger. Your obsession with getting revenge on Konoha might take us to war with them when we can least afford it. And it also may have cost your granddaughter her life. My daughter's life. That's enough, yelled Onoki as he smashed his hands on his desk to stand up and glare at his son. You forget that I'm still your leader, so show some restraint. If you can't do that, then I suggest you get out of here. Go and help in the village or something. Kitsuchi was about to give a rebuttal, but he managed to keep himself from escalating the argument, so he settled for just turning and started to walk towards the door. Fine. I can't bear to be close to you right now, answered the man before opening the door and smashing it as he left. Onoki sat down again on his chair and started massaging his temple, still fuming. He knew that Kitsuchi was right, he had screwed up. But what was done and there was nothing that he could do to undo the damage. So all that was left to do was to try to damage control the situation as much as he could. But still, his worries had just been made even bigger. They had failed to get the boy, so all this mess had been for nothing, and it had come with a great price for them. Now he had to worry about what Konoha would do once they got word of the attempt on their Jinchuriki. But the thing that ate at his conscience the most was the well-being of Kurotsuchi. If something were to happen to her, he knew that Kitsuchi would never forgive him. Heck, even Onoki wouldn't forgive himself. And what made all of this worse was that he could do nothing for the girl right now. He could just cling to the small hope that she was alright and managed to find her way home. Somewhere in the land of fire, Jiraiya, along with Sakura, Kakashi, and Team 8 rapidly traveled jumping from tree to tree, with their destination being the land of lightning in hopes of finding Naruto. Team 8 was a team specialized in tracking, and considering that they were Naruto's friends, it was the logical conclusion to send them for the blonde. Sakura and Kakashi had come too, as they were the Jinchuriki's teammates and deserved to participate in the search, not to mention that they were pretty skilled in their own right and could definitely make a difference, especially Kakashi. As if Naruto being lost wasn't bad enough, before leaving Konoha, Jiraiya got a message from Kosuke informing him that he found the Iwa search party dead, most likely the handiwork of the Akatsuki, which had to mean that they were still lurking around those parts looking for Naruto. So now both Team 7 and 8 were in a hurry to get to Naruto before the organization of S-rank criminals got to him first. Sakura was a girl with shoulder-length bright pink hair, large green eyes, and a broad forehead. She was wearing a sleeveless red top, pink elbow protectors, black gloves, matching black calf-high boots and black shorts underneath a pink apron skirt. She used her red-clothed forehead protector in a tiara-like style. I hope Naruto is okay. How long until we get to the land of lightning, Jiraiya-sama? Asked the pinkette to the Sannin with worry in her green eyes, stressing over the safety of her loudmouthed teammate. A few more. Gasp, hours until, gasp, we reach the border. Said the white-haired man with ragged breath. He was completely exhausted and then some. He had fought an entire Iwa battalion, along with 2 members of Akatsuki, went back to Konoha in haste, then headed back to searching, all with little to no rest. It was truly a testament to Jiraiya's strength how he even managed to keep going. And even then we still have to go to the sea in the same location that Jiraiya-sama and Naruto were at, said Kakashi. He was a tall man with spiky silver hair. He had a lone visible dark eye as his other eye was covered by his forehead protector. He was wearing the standard Konoha shinobi uniform, which consisted of a green flak jacket over a dark blue shirt with long sleeves, fingerless gloves, and dark blue pants. And he used a face mask that covered the lower half of his face, starting at the nose. Despite the situation, he managed to keep himself collected, even if he truly was worried over Naruto, but precisely because he was worried is why he needed to keep himself focused. He couldn't afford to make mistakes when his student's life was at risk. Even more of a reason to hurry. The longer we take, the most his scent will dissipate. If we take too long, even me and Akamaru won't be able to track him down. The fact that we have to track him on water is even worse. Said Kiba, to which Akamaru replied with a bark of confirmation. Kiba was a member of Team 8, and being a member of the Inuzuka clan, he had a wild appearance. He had messy brown hair, black eyes with slitted pupils, and elongated canines. He also had the distinctive red fang markings on his cheek that was customary of the Inuzuka. He wore a black leather jacket and black pants, and the cloth of his forehead protector was also black. Akamaru was Kiba's dog partner, and was big for a dog, so much that one could ride on him. He had squinted eyes and his fur was almost completely white, save for his ears which were a brown color. Luckily my insects can cover a wide area, even in water. But I do agree that we should hurry, replied Shino. He was also a member of Team 8 and was from the Aburame clan. And as it was common of the Aburame, he was a mysterious individual. He had a black high-collared shirt that covered the lower half of his face, and over the shirt, he wore a green jacket with a hood that covered his head, which only left his eyes as the only visible part of his body, and even then his eyes were also covered with round dark glasses. And he also had a satchel strapped to his back. We can't get discouraged. We absolutely have to help Naruto-kun, said Hinata with resolution, which was uncommon for the normally shy and meek girl, but when it came to Naruto she always gave it her all. She was the last member of Team 8. She was a girl with dark blue hair, pale skin, and white pupil-less eyes that gave her away as a member of the Hyuga clan. She wore a cream and violet-colored jacket, blue pants and used her forehead protector around her neck. She had been waiting anxiously to see Naruto again after these few years without him, so when she heard that her crush was in trouble she promised to herself that she wouldn't fail the boy that had inspired her so much. I promise I won't let you down, Naruto-kun, thought the girl with determination. Everyone save for Jiraiya stared at the Hyuga heiress in curiosity. She had refrained from speaking for most of the trip, even less than Shino, which was a feat in itself, and to see the timid blue-haired girl be so resolute was an anomaly. But they guessed it was to be expected. This involved Naruto after all. Hinata's affections for Naruto was probably the worst-kept secret in Konoha. Out of all their acquaintances the only one oblivious enough to not notice it was the blonde knucklehead himself. Anyway, Hinata is right. We have to give it our all. If Naruto was in our place he would do the same, said Kakashi to the young ninjas. Of course, you don't have to tell me twice, Roger, responded Sakura, Kiba, and Shino at the same time, just as resolute as Hinata had been. So, trying to put their worries aside, all went to focus on their task to rescue their fellow shinobi and friend, and continued on their way as fast as they could, for the Land of Lightning was waiting. Land of Frost. Naruto stared at the ice-covered land with not a lot of enthusiasm. He wasn't looking forward to traveling through there. Having lived all his life in the warm weather of Konoha he wasn't used to the harsh cold tundra. He glanced to his side and found a similar expression on Kurotsuchi, realizing that she had probably the same reservations than him. This is it, then, said Darui to the two teenagers. This is where we part ways. We are finally out of the Land of Lightning and I recommend that you not come back for a while. Nothing personal, but if you were to show up back so soon it would look suspicious for you. And hopefully, save me another headache, thought the dark-skinned man. Wait a minute, you aren't planning on leaving us in this place without proper equipment for the cold, are you? Replied Kurotsuchi incredulously. She had thought that they would at least put them in a boat to the land of hot water or something, not just leaving them to freeze to death in this icebox. The crazy girl is right, what the hell, Mr. Darui? Said Naruto with the same concerns as the tomboy. Said man just stared at them impassively, however. I'm sorry, but you are still technically our prisoners. I have already done more than I needed to when I decided to bring you both here. Despite saying that, he couldn't help but feel sorry for them when he saw their worried faces, so he quickly added something more. Come on, don't look so down. The Land of Frost is pretty small, you shouldn't take more than a day to cross it. So as long as a storm doesn't start you'll be fine. Besides, I have something for you that should help you. As he said it, he signaled one of the Chunin accompanying them and this stepped forward. Both teenagers looked with curiosity to the Chunin when the man pulled out two scrolls and threw the contents to both of them as he unsealed them. My weapons pouch? Asked Naruto in surprise. He had thought it had been lost. Yay! We found it sealed in a scroll inside the girl's own pouch. She must have taken it when she captured you. Explained Darui to the blonde. My sword. I didn't expect to see it again. Yelled Kurotsuchi in joy at seeing her mother's blade again along with her weapons pouch. She was almost hugging the thing. She barely even glanced at her pouch now that she had her favorite weapon back. Wow, thanks again Mr. Darui, said Naruto to the man with a grateful grin. By the way, how did you know this one was mine? I found some change of clothes sealed in a scroll in there. You really like orange, replied the Junin with a deadpan look and Naruto scratched his head sheepishly. With that out of the way, the Kumo shinobi were ready to leave. Well, I can't say it has been fun, but I do hope to meet you guys again. You seem like nice kids. I just hope we do so in different circumstances, said Darui to the teenagers with a side glance as he turned to return to the Land of Lightning along with the 5 Chunin. I hope so too. Thanks for everything, Mr. Darui. I'll definitely never forget it, Datbeo, said Naruto cheerfully in farewell to the man. Kurotsuchi just stared expressionlessly at the Kumo ninja. Unlike Naruto, she didn't feel any gratitude to the man, as she knew that he didn't do this for their sake, he just did what he felt was best for him and his nation. She couldn't blame him, she would have done the same, but that didn't mean she didn't resent almost dying at the hands of the Kumo shinobi. And with a lazy wave, Darui and the rest of the Kumo ninja disappeared in a body flicker technique, leaving Naruto and the pink-eyed girl alone. Naruto stared for a moment at the spot that the Kumo ninja had been, before turning to the girl. So, what do you propose we? He was interrupted when he was forced to jump to the side to avoid a slash from the girl's sword. What the? You bitch. Now that they are gone, I can finally get back to my mission again. Such a drag since I had already caught you, but that can't be helped, said the girl as she readied her mother's blade again, ready to retry her attack. You are still going on about that? I helped you back there in the island. I had to disclose that I'm a Janshuriki just so you could keep your stupid head, shouted the blonde to the girl, shaking a fist in anger. Even if Darui admitted that he wasn't really going to kill the girl, they hadn't known that at the time. It's not my fault that you are such a moron to help your enemy. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't owe you shit, said the Iowa girl coldly to the orange-clad genin. And what's the big idea now then, You wanna fight right here and now in this cold? Even if you win, then what? You are just gonna travel through the entire land of frost carrying me, all while you are wounded and low on chakra after battling. You are just gonna get us both killed, yelled Naruto to the tomboy as he stepped back to put more distance between them in case the girl decided to not listen to reason. Kurotsuchi frowned in thought. That was the most sense the moron had made since she met him. It was true that it would be deadly to try and travel the land of frost if she was wounded and not properly equipped for the cold, and carrying the heavy blonde wouldn't do her any favors. She got a bit angry that for once the moron had had more hindsight than her. Shut up. And what do you propose, A truce? Maybe, answered Naruto dumbly and squinting his eyes. Ha, as if. Keep dreaming, said the girl in a mocking manner. Like hell she would let the idiot get away. I don't know about you, but I just want to go home. I'm just proposing we just stop fighting and go our separate ways, tried to reason Naruto. Right now he just cared more about finding his sensei than keep this quarrel with the crazy chick. Not happening, said Kurotsuchi plainly and with finality, not relenting at all. Fine. Tell you what, I will fight you if you want, but not here. Let's first get out of this cold place and then I will kick your, yelled Naruto in exasperation. If the stubborn girl wanted a fight so badly, then so be it. But he wasn't gonna fight here if he could help it. Kurotsuchi thought long and hard about her answer before finally giving an answer. You better not back down when we do get out of here. I wouldn't put it past a Konoha ninja to chicken out of a battle, said the girl with an edge in her voice, warning the blonde to not try anything. I scared of you. You wish. I just don't want to fight here. The harsh weather could end up killing us both, replied the blonde hotly, offended to be considered a coward. Kurotsuchi stared at the blonde's blue eyes to try and see if she could see any sign that he was lying. When she found none, she gave a sigh. Okay, I'll go along with this for the moment. But I'm warning you, as soon as we get out of this freezer I will tear you a new one. So don't think for a moment that this makes us buddies. You don't have to remind me, I know, said Naruto, somewhat glad that the girl seemed to listen for once. Then what are we waiting for? Let's get going already, said the tomboy impatiently as she sheathed her sword. The sooner they got out of the land of frost, the sooner they would settle their dispute once and for all, and getting away from the unbearable cold would be nice too. And so the Iowa Kunoichi and the Konoha Jinchuriki turned around and continued their trip, careful to keep their distance in case any of them tried to take the other out with a cheap shot. Even if their journey through this frosty wasteland wasn't supposed to be long, they knew that having to worry about the other attacking was gonna make it seem longer than a day. Naruto and Kurotsuchi were still trying to find their way out of the snowy nation, and currently, they were bracing themselves and shivering in the cold as a raging blizzard descended on them. Kurotsuchi cursed their rotten luck. Of course, the exact thing that they didn't want to happen just had to happen. ODD don't worry, as long as street storm doesn't street start UW will be fine. FFing a asshole. Complained the girl with chattering teeth as she repeated what Darui told them earlier. Naruto turned his head slowly to the girl, shivering just as bad as she was. It's N not L like MMI Mr. Darui K knew T this W was gonna happen. Said the boy in an effort to calm the girl down. The tomboy rolled her eyes uncaringly at the blonde's comment. I instead of K kissing Y your boyfriend's ass, help me look F for shelter. Responded the prodigy, squinting her eyes while glancing around to the distance in an effort to catch sight of anything that could be used to protect themselves from the blizzard. Naruto did just that. Even if he didn't appreciate to be insulted, the cold didn't leave any energy to be looking for a fight right now. After glancing around for a few minutes, he perked up when he finally saw something in the nearest mountain that could be of use. Look, there is a cave there. He shouted while pointing at said cave. His joy was such that he didn't even stutter from the cold. The pink-eyed girl looked to where the blonde was pointing at, and she could, in fact, see a cave. Well done, moron. It seems that even you have your uses. Said the girl with snide. Naruto frowned at the girl's usual contemptuous attitude but refrained from commenting. He just wanted to get there as fast as he could and see if it was fit to stay there until the storm passed them by. A few minutes later they arrived at the cave. And after checking that there were no bears or any other predator living there, they found comfortable spots in the walls opposite from one another and sat down to inspect their supplies. Luckily for them, there were plenty of twigs inside the cave, so they just needed to find a way to light them and make a bonfire. TCH, I can't find my tinderbox, complained the girl out loud. At least inside the cave the cold was a bit more bearable and her teeth weren't chattering anymore. Hey idiot, use a fire jutsu or something, will ya? Be useful for once, said Kurotsuchi as she glanced to the blonde, who was going through his supplies too. I kinda don't know any, replied the Jinchuriki with a hand behind his head, a bit ashamed to admit that he didn't know a fire jutsu. Kurotsuchi looked dumbfounded at that. What do you mean you don't know a fire jutsu? You are from Konoha aren't you? You know, the land of Ing fire. What kind of Konoha shinobi doesn't know a fire jutsu? Shut up, shouted a flustered Naruto. I have never needed it. I'm awesome enough already as I am. And why do I have to do it? If you are such a great kunoichi then why don't you do it? Pointed out the blonde. She frowned at the boy's accusations. She wasn't about to tolerate the idiot judging her skills. I know plenty of jutsu, unlike you. But mostly just my earth-based jutsu and the ones from my Kekkei Genkei. I just don't know a fire-based one yet, but at least I haven't been sitting on my butt relying only on a clone technique and a demon's chakra. She didn't mention that her Kekkei Genkei, the Yoden lava release, was a combination of fire and earth affinities, so she did, in fact, have a fire affinity, but she wasn't going to admit out loud that she didn't know a fire jutsu even despite the fact that she did have an affinity for it. I know other techniques too. I can use Rasengan and summon toads. I doubt you have anything as cool as that, claimed Naruto competitively. She shrugged uncaringly, not impressed. Whatever you say, like that will help us right now, we still have to find a way to start a fire. Said the prodigy as she continued to look inside her pouch. Got it. Naruto's cry of victory caught Kurotsuchi's attention and she lifted her head to see the blonde holding a box of matches that he must have had in his own pouch. Then what are you waiting for? Start a bonfire already, demanded the girl with urgency. You don't have to be so bitchy all the time, you know. Replied the Jinchuriki and started to gather some of the twigs scattered in the cave. After a few minutes, they had a decently sized bonfire that illuminated the cave and acted as a great source of heat. It still wasn't enough to completely keep them warm, but it made the cold much more bearable than before. Much better, said the girl with a content sigh. She was still trembling, but the cold wasn't so bad now, but it was still pretty chilly, though. She heard the clatter of steel against a rock and turned in curiosity to see what the moron was up to. And she saw the boy unsealing a pot and a kettle from a scroll. What are you doing now? Asked the girl with a raised eyebrow. Preparing myself something to eat, of course, responded the genin as he unsealed some cups of instant ramen from another scroll. I should have guessed as much, said Kurotsuchi with a blank look. It wasn't long until Naruto had few steaming cups of ramen ready to be eaten. It wasn't much, but it was something, and with the weather the way it was, a hot meal was very desirable. Naruto was happily enjoying his noodles when he took notice that Kurotsuchi was still trembling terribly. Now that her previous adrenaline of desperately looking for shelter had faded off, the cold was starting to affect her more. It was to be expected, honestly. Out of the two of them, she was the one with the least unsuited attire for traveling in the snow. She had discarded her flak jacket when it got ruined in the fight with Kisame. She was wearing a skirt, and her shirt was missing one of the sleeves. All in all, she was very ill-fitted to be withstanding the harsh cold. At least Naruto's jacket was pretty warm. Naruto couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for the girl, even if she was a pain in the that hated his guts. He realized that having such a bleeding heart, even for his enemies, could be very bad for him and could potentially be dangerous, but he couldn't help it. When he saw someone in need that he could help, he simply didn't feel comfortable if he didn't at least try to do something. So with resolve, he grabbed one of the still hot cups of soup and extended his arm in an offering. Here, have some. The cave was small enough that just extending his arm as he leaned was enough to close the distance with the girl halfway. Kurotsuchi was taken aback when the boy addressed her, offering food. She was so tempted to just throw the steaming liquid in the blonde's face, but to tell the truth she was really hungry. And despite her earlier criticisms of ramen, she didn't dislike it, and a warm serving of soup looked very appealing at the moment. She gave a suspicious look before addressing the Jinchuriki once more. How do I know you didn't poison it or something? Naruto looked offended that she even suggested that he would use such a cheap tactic like poison. What? Of course it's not poisoned. You saw that I was about to eat it a moment ago, why would I poison it? He continued to look with indignation at the girl, expecting to hear her answer. After staring at the blonde for any sign of untruthfulness, she closed her eyes and gave a resigned sigh. I guess I'm giving you way too much credit. You can't possibly be clever enough to think about it. Naruto's eye was twitching, trying to barely keep his cool. He was trying to help her and she was still finding ways to mock him. You are gonna take it or not? He was seriously starting to regret offering her any food. Such a good ramen wasted on an ungrateful banshee. She better take it soon before he changed his mind. She pretended to think it over, all the while with a wry smile plastered on her face. Tell you what. I'm going to humor you this once, so I guess I will accept it. She finally reached for the cup and took it in her gloved hand. Don't expect thanks for this, though. I still hate you. She then proceeded to bring the cup to her lips and took a small sip, being careful to not burn herself. You are welcome, said Naruto with sarcasm and with a face that left clear that he wasn't amused by the girl's thankless behavior. However, he just brushed it off and went back to eating his own. This is not as good as Ichiraku's ramen, but it will have to do. Yay, it can't replace a good serving of barbecue, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Replied the girl and took another sip of her cup shortly afterward. I remember you mentioning something like that before. Is Iowa's barbecue really that good? Asked Naruto, truly curious to know. Oh, you haven't lived until you taste it. But why do you ask, dumbass? Said Kurotsuchi, raising her eyebrow once again. Is just that, even though I have gone to a lot of different small villages, I have never traveled to any of the big ones, you know. Like Suna or Kumo or Kiri, none of those, including Iwa. So I'm curious to know more about them. To see how different they are from my home. Said Naruto, placing the ramen cup beside him to put both hands behind his head. You think I'm stupid? I'm not about to be disclosing information of my village to an enemy. Said the pink-eyed girl with an accusatory stare. Are you always like this? I just want to talk, that's all. Nothing much we can do right now besides trying to not freeze to death. Said the blonde with exasperation. This girl was truly grating on his nerves. Kurotsuchi tilted her head in thought. She guessed talking wasn't that bad if only to distract herself from the terrible cold. But was it all right to be having a conversation with the idiot? And about her village no less. But, she supposed that just a tiny bit of non-compromising information couldn't hurt, right? She gave a huff of resignation. Okay, if you are just dying to know, I guess I can tell you a little bit. Naruto perked up at finally having the closest to a civilized conversation with the girl since he met her. Seeing that she got the blonde's attention, Kurotsuchi continued. We have all our buildings on top of small mountains, and we have to use bridges to go from place to place. And not only that, but the village itself is surrounded by mountains much taller than the ones we used to live in. One thing I love is seeing the setting sun when it can just barely be seen above the hills. Explained the girl with a longing face. Naruto had his face in wonder, he guessed it had to be a sight to behold. Sounds amazing. Do you have anything like our Hokage mountain? In Konoha we have all the faces of our Hokage carved into a mountain, for Iwa it should be easy to do with how many mountains you have. The girl widened her eyes at the information. The Kage's faces carved in a mountain. That sounded so cool, but she would rather eat her own foot before giving Konoha credit for anything. Bah, who needs a Kage monument? That's way too pretentious if you ask me. Said Kurotsuchi with a wave of her hand in an effort to play it down. You know what's awesome? Waterfalls. We have tons of waterfalls and they look amazing. There are times in the day when they shine like diamonds when the daylight is just right. Iwa sounds like a cool place. I wish I could see it someday. Said Naruto with a thoughtful look. Well, you could always let me capture you and you'll be able to see it. Responded the tomboy with a mischievous smile. Naruto went alarmed at that. Like hell, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like visit the place or something. Explained the boy, exalted. You can try if you want. But my people would kill you the instant they landed their eyes on you. Said the girl in all seriousness. Naruto put on a sad expression and dropped his head at the reminder of their village's enmity. It's such a shame really. I wish there was a way for our villages to be friends. He heard Kurotsuchi snort at his comment, but he continued nonetheless. We don't have to keep fighting each other. Come on, you can't honestly say that you prefer to be in a never-ending conflict, can you? He asked the girl with the most serious face he had used until now. She stared back at him just as intensely, and after a minute, she responded. I don't care about peace, I just want yous to get what's coming to you for all you have done to us. She saw the blonde's face morph into one of incredulity. You can't possibly mean it. Who in their right mind wouldn't want peace over conflict? Shouted Naruto in a rhetoric manner. Kurotsuchi groaned in irritation. Please don't you start with your peace bullshit again. If you want to believe in fairy tales, go ahead, but shut up about it. I'm tired of hearing you say stupid shit. I, for one, don't give a damn. Naruto frowned, getting frustrated once again with the girl. Well, I rather believe in fairy tales than being a bitter person like you. Honestly, since I met you I think I haven't heard you say anything positive at all. Declared the Jinchuriki. She turned angrily at the blonde and met his blue eyes with her angry pink ones. What's there to be positive about? I'm stuck with the biggest moron on the planet as I'm slowly turning into a popsicle. Not to mention I was captured by Kumo Ninja and I'm alive just by mere chance. Yeah, I have so many reasons to be a ray of sunshine. Said Kurotsuchi sarcastically. Naruto felt like pulling at his hair. This girl is so freaking difficult, thought the genin with a grimace. Sometimes I can't stand you. Why do all our conversations end up like this? You are probably the hardest person to have a simple conversation with that I have met. If talking to me is so bad, then stop doing it. Do us both a favor and stop bothering me, shouted back the girl with ire. Maybe I'll do that, replied Naruto equally as angry. Fine by me. Fine. And with that, both teenagers ended their discussion and turned away from the other. Now with the mood much more tense, they started trying to ignore each other as much as they could. So with their tempers still blazing, they sat in silence for the rest of the day waiting for the storm to pass. They ended up waiting all night, as the storm just died out in the next morning. That would usually mean that they had time to have a good night's rest, but given the fact that they had to worry about the other slitting each other's throats in their sleep, it made it impossible to relax, much less sleep. They were now once again on their way through the snowy terrain. Even without the blizzard, the weather was still terribly cold, but at least it was much less dangerous now. After their dispute the day before, they refrained from speaking between them, barely acknowledging the other. Naruto wasn't particularly cheery at the moment. He couldn't understand his traveling companion for the life of him. She was just so unbearably bitter and bitchy, and despite his best efforts to keep things as amicably as he could, she always ended up blowing up at him. The fact that at the moment he was forced to stick around her was tiresome. Hey dumbass, look, a village! Shouted Kurotsuchi in excitement with a finger pointing to the distance. Her sudden outburst snapped Naruto out of his inner rambling and focused his attention to where she was pointing at, and the girl was right, he could see a small village in the distance. At least that served to lift his spirits. We may be able to find some proper clothing for the cold in there, along with some food while we are at it, declared the girl with a grin. What are we waiting for? Let's go, Dadbao, said Naruto, joining the girl in her excitement. After a few minutes of full-speed sprinting, it didn't take long for the two shinobi to reach the small village. The village wasn't big by any stretch. There were maybe around 30 wooden buildings total, which was pretty small in comparison to what the teenagers were used to. However, not even a couple minutes in, the two young ninjas noticed something wasn't right. As they walked the street, they saw that it was pretty desolated for the time of the day, even for a small village. And the few people that they did see on the street had faces that reflected hopelessness if their dead eyes were any indication to go by. The teenagers kept walking slowly and glancing around. The villagers barely looked back at them, seemingly not even caring about the strangers in their home. Kurotsuchi looked at Naruto with a side glance. Hey, idiot, did you notice? Asked the girl to the blonde. Yay. These people are acting pretty weird. There are not many of them and they have this strange look on their face. Answered Naruto, not stopping inspecting the village even as he talked. I'm starting to think these people may need more help than we do. Concluded the pink-eyed girl. Naruto nodded at that, in agreement with the girl. Is something going on here? It wasn't long until they spotted a small shop. It was the kind of shop that usually sold cheap quality products at low price, which suited them just fine since they only needed a couple cloaks that they would probably discard as soon as they got out of the land of frost. Good day, called a middle-aged man to them in greeting as they came into the store. He was plain looking, he was of medium height, had a short goatee, and black messy hair. But he still had a sad look just like most people in the village. Hi, answered both Naruto and Kurotsuchi at the same time. What can I do for you? Asked the man cordially. This time, Kurotsuchi stepped towards the man. We are looking for some traveling cloaks for the winter. We aren't from around here and we need to pass through the land of frost. Told the tomboy to the man. The man nodded and pointed to the side of the store. Of course, young lady. I have some winter cloaks over there, it's not much but I think they do the job well enough. Said the man gently. The pair of ninja walked to where the cloaks were and they found them to be just what they were looking for, they were large white fur cloaks. As expected, they weren't of the finest work, but they would do. They promptly paid for their new pieces of clothing and rapidly put them on to try them. They were rather comfy and warm, which was just perfect. Ah, these feel nice, purred Naruto in delight, glad to finally have something decent to cover the cold with. Yay, the cloaks are good, despite being cheap. Agreed Kurotsuchi. The man had a small grin on his face at the praise for his merchandise. Glad you youngster like them. To tell the truth, sales have dropped drastically lately. People right now don't feel like going out of their homes, said the man with a sad look that soon replaced his previous grin. That got both teenagers' curiosity, and Naruto couldn't help but ask. Speaking of which, old man, is something going on around here? People are acting strangely. Kurotsuchi normally disliked the blonde's nosy attitude, but this time she was glad that he asked. She too was curious to know what the deal with the village was. The man's expression got even sadder, but he started speaking anyway. You see, we have a crisis in town, actually. People have started going missing for a while now, explained the man somberly. Going missing, you say? How does it happen? Asked Kurotsuchi with her head tilted to the side, puzzled. The man closed his eyes in remembrance. We are not sure. Since about a month ago, people go to the mountains to either hunt or gather supplies, and sometimes they never return. Explained the man. We have accidents from time to time, so it's not as uncommon for people go missing. But most of the time they return after a while if they get lost or the occasional storm traps them. After all, in the wilderness, a lot of things can happen. But this is different, the number of missing people is too high. Most people here have lost someone already. Now almost everyone stays in their homes, either from fear of going missing too or to mourn their lost loved ones. By the end of the explanation, Naruto, and even Kurotsuchi had looks of pity. They had guessed something was up in the village, but not quite like this. Whatever was happening had to be something big. Daddy, who are they? A small voice interrupted them before they could ask anything else. All of the room occupants turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. They saw a small girl, probably no older than 7 years or so. She had dark hair that she kept in 2 pigtails and was wearing a small winter jacket and pants. She seemed wary and looked sad. They are just a pair of customers, sweetie, said the man to the girl with a warm smile. The girl approached them as Naruto and Kurotsuchi watched in curiosity. After getting close enough that she had to look up to meet their eyes, she said, "You are ninja, right?" Asked the child innocently to the teenagers as she looked to their forehead protectors. Oh, yay we are, replied Kurotsuchi, not sure how to address the small girl. In an instant, she had a hopeful look and her face brightened. Really? Then, can you help my mommy? She hasn't come home since forever. I just want her to be with me. Please, pleaded the girl to the shinobi. Naruto and Kurotsuchi both looked stunned. They never expected the girl to make such a request and were at a loss for words. They didn't know if they could help, but they surely didn't want to break the heart of a little girl. Please Yuna, can you go play in another room? We are busy here. When we are finished you can come talk to them, alright? Said the man to the child. The little girl pouted but still obeyed. Okay daddy, said the girl before leaving through a door behind the man as Naruto and Kurotsuchi looked on silently. Said man just gave a sigh before turning to the Iwa ad Konoha shinobi. That was my daughter Yuna. She is usually very reserved and doesn't talk to strangers, but she has been getting restless lately. He brought his palm to his forehead before continuing. I didn't mention this before, but my wife is also one of the missing people. Naruto widened his eyes at hearing that, while Kurotsuchi just narrowed her eyes, already having guessed as much by the way the man and the girl were acting. What? How did it happen? Asked a worried Naruto. It was just like him to worry for the well-being of others. The man once again gave a sigh, much more melancholic this time. It was soon after the first disappearances happened. At the time, we didn't think it had been more than a terrible tragedy, an accident or something, and we ignored that this was going to become a trend. Naruto and Kurotsuchi listened intently to the man's story, curious to know more. Anyway, one night my wife and I went to the woods to gather some firewood. We knew that at this time of the year storms are very common, and they can last for days, so we needed to stockpile as many resources as we could. But when we split up to gather on our own, she never came back. I waited for her for hours that day, until I finally decided that something terrible had to have happened. For days, I would go back into the woods to keep looking, but I found nothing. I haven't seen my wife since. Finished the man at the verge of tearing up. Naruto clenched his hands, feeling the need to do something. He couldn't forgive himself if he could do something, anything, to help these people and not even try. Is really not my business, but, if this problem has been so persistent, then why don't you guys ask for the help of Shimogakure? I mean, they are the hidden village of the region. Suggested Kurotsuchi. The man just shook his head solemnly. They only accept the jobs that pay the most out of the bunch. They aren't a big hidden village, so they can't afford to waste manpower but on the most well-paying jobs they can find. We are a small village, we couldn't possibly gather enough money to warrant their help, even less so now that we are short on people, and we become less and less as the weeks go by. But how can they just do nothing? Said Naruto in anger. He could understand that Shimo would not have enough shinobi to accept all mission requests, but these people were suffering, and they might be dying from who knew what. He knew that if he was Hokage he would never allow the people of his region to suffer if he had any say in it. I'm sorry, I'm going to go out soon and I have to close the store. I think I have taken enough of your time. Thanks for stopping by and I wish you good luck on your travels. Said the man as he started preparing to close shop. It was a peculiar hour to be closing, since it was early still, so they assumed that he was probably going to go out to keep searching for his wife. The teenagers excused themselves and thanked the man for the items before they left. However, as they exited they saw the little girl from earlier waiting for them just around the corner of the shop. They guessed that she must have sneaked out of the store from a back door or something. Naruto waved at the girl and walked towards her. Hi there. Yuna-chan, right, what are you doing here all by yourself? Asked the blonde to the child. Kurotsuchi also approached the girl in curiosity, and she was taken aback when the girl took out a small piggy bank from her cloak and held it before them in an offering. Please, Mr. and Miss Shinobi. Please, bring back my mommy. This is all the money I have, so please, bring her back to me. Pleaded the girl with tears streaming down her face and shaking with her sobs. Kurotsuchi widened her eyes at the unexpected request from the girl. The girl's affection for her mother was obviously strong, and she could see herself in the child. She had lost her mother too when she was too young to even walk. Now another small child was begging her to save her from a similar fate. The situation tore at even Kurotsuchi's heart. Yuna-chan, mumbled Naruto, unsure of how to respond to the girl's actions. Kurotsuchi got the blonde's attention when she started walking towards the girl. Kurotsuchi? Asked the confused blonde. The tomboy stopped just before the girl and got on one knee to meet the child's gaze with her own. The little girl stared back at Kurotsuchi, confused and with a puffy face but still showing determination. Kurotsuchi put a hand on the piggy bank and gently pushed it to the child's chest, which made the little girl stare at it not knowing what was the older girl doing. Keep it, it's yours. Said Kurotsuchi in a low voice, almost a whisper in an effort to be gentle. You should go back to your dad. If he finds out you aren't there he is gonna get worried. You don't want that, do you? But my mom, replied the child and one could tell she was about to cry. She wouldn't want you making your dad worry about you and giving your hard-earned money to strangers. So just go back inside. Wait there for your mom. Said Kurotsuchi to the girl. She really wasn't good with kids and this was one time she wished that she had inherited her mother's nurturing nature. The small girl looked terribly disappointed and heartbroken at having her request dismissed. And while still shaking with repressed sobs she went back to her family's store. With a heavy soul, Naruto watched the little girl walk back inside the building and he clenched his fists with impotence. He could just not let the suffering of this people continue. He and his traveling companion stayed at the side of the building for a few minutes, going over these recent events in their heads. After a while, Naruto made up his mind and decided that he was going to help these people, with or without Kurotsuchi. So if she was going to berate him for chickening out of their fight, then so be it. He opened his mouth to tell the girl what was on his mind but was interrupted before he could. "I'm gonna help them," said Kurotsuchi plainly, which left Naruto agape. He wasn't sure if he heard right. The tomboy hadn't shown him anything even remotely resembling compassion since he met her, so he wasn't even sure if she was even capable of displaying it. Replied Naruto dumbly at a loss for words. "I said I'm gonna help them," repeated Kurotsuchi, now fully facing the blonde. "You can come if you want. Or stay here, or go to the land of fire, or whatever that you want. But I'm gonna help these people." Naruto quickly snapped out of his surprise to respond to the girl. "Wait a minute, I'm gonna help too. I can't just leave these people to suffer." Kurotsuchi took a deep breath, and after much hesitation, she extended a hand to the Jinchuriki. Naruto stared at her hand, not fully realizing what she was proposing. "Let's work together just this once. But keep in mind, this alliance is only while we deal with whatever this is. I still hate your dumb." Kurotsuchi reminded him. She was making a great sacrifice by swallowing her pride to set aside her differences with the Konoha bastard if it meant saving an entire village, especially a little girl that was in a pain that she could relate so well to. Naruto grinned despite the fact that the pink-eyed girl still despised him, but he was glad that at least they finally saw eye to eye on something. "Then we have a deal," said Naruto before shaking her hand firmly. And so, for the first time, even if only temporarily, they weren't enemies, they were partners.